The Dark Tournament Saga is an insane mess that I loved. This is Yu Hakusho leaving its comfort zone by committing to a long-form story that stretches well beyond the entirety of the Spear Detective Saga, building up entertaining villains while keeping the audience engaged with bloody conflict after bloody conflict, like we're the demon crowd demanding even more pain. I had no idea what to expect, but from the second Toguro showed back up, I was hooked. There were some hiccups here or there, but overall I'm blown away by how well Togashi was able to craft this tournament. With so many moving pieces behind the scenes that build up the overarching narrative tension, he was still able to continuously introduce new characters in refreshing situations. The arc never gets stale, the stakes constantly get higher, and the characters only get cooler. This is the second part of my 100% blind series review, and I want to start with the angry young man at the center of it all. Throughout the first saga, I was impressed by Yusuke's characterization and depth. A lot of care went into how he was perceived by the audience, so I shouldn't be surprised that once again, Togashi hit it out of the park with his character. From start to finish, there's a clear through line for Yusuke's development that I didn't even realize the extent of until I finished the arc. At the end of the Spirit Detective Saga, Yusuke feels like he's on top of the world. He's this kick-ass infamous punk kid who casually defeated an underworld boss and supposedly helped kill one of the most powerful demons around. In retrospect, everything about the Rescue Yukina arc was to establish a false sense of security that Yusuke was near the apex of power. Look at how easily he and Kuwabara cut through a small army of demons. Welp, when Toguro returns, that comes crumbling down. Literally. Toguro is such a great villain and an interesting foil for Yusuke, who I'll be talking about a lot, but making Yusuke and Kuwabara's victory a fake, and then demonstrating just how powerless they truly are, was a fantastic way to reset our assumptions. As Toguro destroys that construction site, he not only brings Yusuke's cocky attitude crashing down, but also shatters the barrier between the main characters and the greater paranormal world filled with horror. The best part about this scene is how visibly terrified Yusuke is. He's frozen in fear, unable to move in the presence of such power. It's a mental state we have never seen him in before, and serves as the perfect starting point for a brand new journey. Despite all the insanity of this arc, Yusuke still managed to shine through, and that's nothing to scoff at. He doesn't just get to do some cool punch-in as the center of attention, his engagement within the narrative organically develops his character toward his ultimate triumph. From the start, we knew what the final fight was going to be, but making the stepping stones to that finale exciting and meaningful was a really difficult task that I felt was handled beautifully. I appreciated the journey Yusuke went on, from a terrified child to a somber Super Saiyan. His arc isn't something I've seen similar stories focus in on, and once again, I think Togashi's talent as a writer really shines through whenever attention is paid to Yusuke. The introduction of the Dark Tournament was a clever idea for this new saga. Although it does take Yu Yu Hakusho down a more typical shonen route, I think it was earned due to the character development and world building it had set up through the prior arcs. For example, the reason basic set dressing, like the crowd hating Yusuke as much as they do, works as well as it does because of events that took place prior to the tournament. More importantly, a lot of groundwork has already been laid for the other members of Team Urameshi, setting them up for big moments and more development. Just like the first saga, the strength of this one comes down to its supporting cast, which has been greatly expanded since the beginning of the series. In an unexpected turn of events, the ladies get involved fairly early on. The problem I had with keeping Keiko in the dark about Yusuke's activities is rectified, and I think it only improved her character. While she does spend most of the saga sitting on her ass, this was a critical development for their relationship. Botan is always fantastic, but after the first few rounds, she became irrelevant outside of color commentary. I appreciated her more as the self-declared team coach, interacting with the fighters ringside, particularly when she was decked out in this Fire Flames fit. She works fine alongside the other ladies, but her characterization feels a little off when she doesn't have a specific purpose. Yukina was an addition that I wasn't expecting to see so soon. Unfortunately, she's clueless and passive, only serving as an excuse for Kuwabara to be silly, which is great, but I'd say she's more so a plot element than a character. Shizuru is the standout. I loved this character, and she quickly skyrocketed to one of my favorites in the series. Although she doesn't get much to actually do, she single-handedly made all the cuts back to the stands feel engaging. She has the perfect attitude to bounce off the rest, doesn't take anyone's shit, and her fairly cynical personality fits with the dark tone of the saga. She even gets a completely unexpected relationship that kept me on my toes. It isn't all ladies on the sidelines though. Koenma's back, and he's cooler than ever.
I'm Koenma. I'm very cool.
My one issue with Koenma was resolved. He finally comes to witness the action in person and drags his slaver, Ogre, with him. His interactions with everyone were a delight. His back and forth with Ogre remains a comedic highlight of the series, and despite his clownish antics, this saga really solidified his position as head of the spirit world. And I cannot talk about the Dark Tournament saga without touching on the two ladies who made it all possible, Koto and Juri. Koto's my favorite of the two. Her sadistic and bloodthirsty desires were always hilarious, and she's got a true love of the game that shines through. Juri is largely there to be a comedic victim, but Koto's bitterness toward her replacement redeemed Juri enough to make her feel at home in the ring. In a saga that can get fairly dark, these two ladies only enhance the experience. And finally, there are dozens of little baddies throughout the arc, but two stand head and shoulders above the rest: Toguro and Sakyo. Toguro is this force of nature, an unstoppable badass with the grossest body in the universe, and a cautionary tale of what could happen to Yusuke if his worst instincts ever took control of him. The thematic purpose he serves is what made the saga a success, plus, keeping with the Yu Hakusho vibe, he's just cool. Sakyo, on the other hand, was an unexpected treat. For the longest time, he was this enigmatic force that constantly kept me intrigued. Togashi really got to flex his sadistic muscles with probably the most evil character we've met yet, and I always loved when he was on screen. He even serves as the perfect contrast to Togoro's gruff attitude and brutish stature, with his subtle, suave scheming, which always made the pair fun to watch. Unlike the prior saga, the Dark Tournament saga isn't broken down into smaller arcs. However, the 5 rounds act as self-contained stories, progressing the overall narrative. These rounds were a lot of fun. The story picks up in the aftermath of the Rescue Yukina arc, with the main characters reveling in the afterglow of their victory, so this was the perfect time to pull the rug out from under us with Togoro's return. This scene was genuinely terrifying and got me so amped up for the new direction the story was going in. With 3 months to prep, Yusuke returns to Genkai while Kuwabara trains under Kurama. I really wish this wasn't glossed over. Maybe I'm just a sucker for training arcs, but I feel they help the audience grow attached to the mentor character, which is vital for this saga. I feel like just one episode would have been great. In regard to the others, wouldn't it have just been damn fun to see these 3 training together? Of the 4 boys, Kuwabara and Kurama interact the least, and I feel like this was the perfect opportunity to develop their relationship. I would have loved to see Kurama in a mentorship role while Hiei makes snide remarks on the side. The first arena is a classic tournament stage, but the aesthetics of the angry crowd, the announcer thirsty for blood, and the shadowy figures up top made it distinct right away. The first round of Kuwabara versus the Demon Brat was serviceable, with some real violent moments to show us how serious the stakes were, but the real standout fights of this first round were Hiei and Kurama. They haven't had a chance to show off since the Beasts of Maze Castle, and these battles highlight their unique strengths. Kurama masterfully undercut a scumbag demon's threats against his mother. Hiei busted out his Dragon of the Darkness flame and completely incinerated his opponent. It does some serious damage to his arm, but holy shit, was it worth it to see this unexpected full-throttle ass-kicking. The final match started off promising when the secret real captain of the enemy team entered the ring, and Yusuke finally woke up because of the smell of booze. That was actually really sad, but an interesting starting point. With the captain continuing to drink to release the beast inside, I thought Yusuke was paired up with this guy for thematic reasons related to alcohol abuse. Then the knife-edge death match happens, and my interest was in free fall. I get that this fight was supposed to be this brutal, manly, knockdown, drag-out duel, and that could have been interesting, but it falls into the background while other characters make their moves. Ultimately, I felt let down that the match didn't capitalize on its unique setup. The strategy of introducing fresh situations is critical for a tournament arc like this, and it's at its best during rounds 2 and 3. They just feel so much more dynamic than round 1, which in retrospect really served to introduce the rules, allowing the following rounds to play in that established sandbox. Round 2 was the most unique in regard to its antagonists, with that frumpy demon doctor and his team of experimented-on slaves. Their sympathetic backstory made Kuwabara's refusal to fight understandable, and Yusuke's rage at the doctor fed perfectly into aligning his spirit with his emotion to increase his power. Of course, the masked fighter ultimately saves the day, and I've gotta talk about this bizarre concept. I can't tell if Togashi was expecting the audience to be dumb, or was showcasing how dumb the characters are. It was obviously Genkai from the second she showed up. I mean, she dresses exactly the same. Of course, there's the young woman reveal to try and throw us off her trail, but that's immediately undercut with a quote from her saying, "It's been 20 years since I've used that technique." Like there's leaving breadcrumbs, and then they're shining a floodlight. I just never got the point of keeping something so obvious a secret from the audience. After Yusuke rocketed the doctor into the stands, the complete silence of the crowd was a poignant reminder that they are in enemy territory. To hit that home, we get the first example of committee interference, which made this tournament so unpredictable. Round 3 starts right away. With Hiei and Genkai trapped by a sexy wire demon, Kurama, Yusuke, and a seriously injured Kuwabara are the sole fighters. What an incredible way to structure things. This team's theme is shinobi fighting for land and a taste of modernity. An interesting concept that never really goes anywhere. The makeup ninja fight was badass as hell, with the most blood to date, and the dude even loses his fucking arm. The first 2 matches were a great showcase for Kurama that proved he has the most well thought out strategic conflicts in the whole saga. Whereas Yusuke gets some great displays of brute force. His quick revenge on the demon torturing an unconscious Kurama was very satisfying, and the Wind Master fight was the most visually exciting of this round. With Yusuke disqualified, an injured Kurama limps into the ring. When he goes to sacrifice his life and he says his goodbyes to his teammates, I really did tear up. Then Yukino shows up and he gets a love turbocharge to win the day in a goofy ass way. This was a really fun batch of matches to show what a good time a tournament arc can be. When the masked fighter reveal goes down, I'm glad it wasn't treated with much fanfare and serves the purpose of starting Yusuke's final test. Genkai says that Yusuke needs to kill her to inherit her full power, but he refuses. Yusuke, this kid who hates authority, denying his chance for great power if it means killing the only teacher who he ever respected, was a fantastic sequence. Surprisingly, Yusuke passed. Genkai wanted a successor who wouldn't take that next step to kill, but wouldn't rule it out immediately either. Once again, Togashi keeps Yusuke morally gray. The semifinals are hosted at a brand new arena that takes the demon aesthetic and cranks it up to an 11 in a design that I love, complete with Juri serving as the new announcer. Hiei really steps up this round, going completely apeshit after being sidelined for too long. He obliterates his opponents in glorious displays of violence that I didn't think could be topped, but God, was I wrong. This round is Kurama's time to shine. Once again, he enters a match where mind games are key, but that backfires big time when the trick used against him brings out this sexy furry. Yoko Kurama is exactly what this character needed. He's a little crueler and a bit more high and mighty, but he's also dumb powerful. Koto's disappointment when her furry hunk reverts back to a tailless human was also good. During the round, Yusuke is going through torture in order to absorb the spirit orb into his body. What could have just been boring cutaways to a boy screaming in a cave are made engaging through fantastic animation and artistic choices. Eventually, when Yusuke is ready to give up on his life, Pooh arrives and tries to save him by carrying over water in his ear wings. The narrative makes the explicit connection that Pooh is Yusuke, and seeing that little guy trying and failing to save him over and over was a terrific visual for Yusuke to recognize. When a stone is about to crush Pooh, Yusuke summons his strength for the sake of others in a brilliant scene, finally receiving the power of the Spirit Wave. It's very cathartic, with so much earned bombast. Back in the arena, things get really lame. Kuwabara faces the captain, but immediately gets teleported away, so a notably weaker Genkai steps into the ring. There's some thematic connection the story tries to make between Genkai's status as a living legend and the demon trying to become a star, but it's really just fluff. Seemingly unable not to make a fool of himself, Kuwabara rushes back into the stadium just to get teleported out once again, which really made him out to be an idiot in a way I didn't appreciate. Turns out the secret team captain was the old man, who was actually a self-absorbed clown that is all style and no substance. It wasn't a bad fight, but nearly every beat just felt like a repeat of stuff we'd seen recently. With that, the semifinals are won.
Toguro vs Genkai is where everything in the arc clicked into place with the excellent reveal of their history. Although a bit vague until the very end, it perfectly explains how their relationship soured. Toguro didn't want to lose his power and youth, so he wished to become a top-class demon. He views Genkai as a coward who ran away from power, she views him as a coward who ran away with the fight with mortality. Their final battle was a great way to send Genkai out while showing off what Toguro can do at just 80% with his gross shoulders. The gut punch of this all is when Yusuke finally shows up. He cradles his dying teacher in his arms, and when she finally passes, he lashes out but gets smacked away, raising the question, can the team win? Meanwhile, the stakes just keep getting higher as Sakyo finally reveals his master plan to use the fortune he'll make off this tournament to fund a permanent tunnel between the human and demon worlds. I didn't know what to expect with Sakyo, but this pure evil motivation is fantastic. Toguro being all for this, since once he defeats Yusuke, he'll have no one left to fight, fits in perfectly as well. After everyone reflects on Genkai's death, Yusuke is comforted by the ever-cool Teen Koenma, who gives him a final message from Genkai. With everyone on Team Urameshi upgrading themselves, it's time for the final round with new 5th teammates, Sakyo and Koenma. I was not expecting either of these two to get into the action, and then I knew it was a long shot, but I really hoped they'd fight.
First up, there's Kurama versus Karasu. This fight had the most build-up aside from the final one, and I do feel like it was the biggest disappointment. The fight was good, it just didn't feel like anything new. Kurama's self-sacrifice had some real gross bloody gore that was fun, but all in all, the Yoko Kurama return was lacking. Hiei versus Bui was immensely better. He's just got the right attitude, and the action felt impactful and quick with next-level animation. Like, every frame went extra hard. In the end, Hiei even got some development by choosing not to kill Bui, and trusting his teammates to protect his hibernating body. Kuwabara suffers from some realistic anxiety when the time comes to face the Elder Toguro, but learning about Genkai's death gives him an honor boost, and he wins! A bit too easily. It felt like his confrontation with Yusuke over Genkai's death was the true climax, which I guess works in its own way. Toguro versus Yusuke. What we've all been waiting for this whole saga delivers right away. The thematic throughline of power, of their loved ones, of facing mortality surpassed my expectations, but the big draw of this fight is the action, and holy hell was it intense. Yusuke slams Toguro and destroys the ring with a huge spirit gun, and just when you think it can't get crazier, he releases fucking spirit cuffs to unleash his full power. Which means we finally get to see Togoro's grotesque 100% transformation. To match the stakes with the action, Toguro begins sucking everyone's souls into his disgusting meat sack. With a 20-minute time limit, the perfect final test for Yusuke's arc begins, and I loved how it tied into his climactic moment at the end of the Beasts of May's castle. He's fighting to protect those he cares about, and he's already failed with Genkai, and he fails again in a heartbreaking scene. Toguro wants to get Yusuke's full power out and kills Kuwabara, blaming Yusuke for not being able to tap into his emotions. Once he does unlock this power, although it is the final triumph, I think it's amazing how somber and sad Togashi keeps Yusuke rather than have him rage out. He's unlocked his power, but it's also broken him. Focusing on emotional repression and topping that off with guilt was an incredible direction to take things. Yusuke manhandles Toguro like it's nothing, confessing that he actually used to respect and envy him. But the tournament taught him the value of what Toguro gave up: mortality and friendship. It's classic, but somehow works without feeling cheesy, probably because it's so earnest. Team Urameshi is declared the winner, but the arc isn't over yet, And personally, this is where some things begin to fall off for me. Turns out, Kuwabara wasn't killed. Kind of lame, but I do appreciate him getting back at Yusuke's secret by keeping his own secret from him. The gang theorizes that Toguro never wanted to kill Kuwabara. He wanted to lose. He wanted to be proven wrong by a stronger opponent. A lot of recontextualizing Toguro goes down here in a very short amount of time. The last episode largely takes place in the spirit world, and as much as I loved seeing more of the setting and fleshing out Toguro, I feel a lot of what was presented undercut major aspects of the arc. His final conversation with Genkai was appreciated, but this did feel like a last-minute redemption that I don't think was well built up. Case in point, the flashback we never saw of Toguro telling Koenma to take care of Genkai's body, which feeds directly into the biggest problem I have with this arc: Genkai coming back to life. This robs a lot of dramatic weight from the last 20 episodes. Now don't get me wrong, I don't automatically hate resurrection in a story, but when a story focuses so much on grief and guilt and legacy, like Yusuke's development did, then I feel resurrection is jarring and unwelcome. That leads me to the highs and lows of this saga. The highs have gotta be the structure of the tournament, the development for Yusuke, the spotlight on his teammates, the world building, and the villains. Yusuke starting off this arc as a scared child and finishing it guilt-ridden and all-powerful, literally shattering the primary villain's worldview, was fantastic, and every step along the way crafted a well-earned and emotionally resonant payoff. Each member of Team Urameshi received much-needed dramatic moments to further flesh out their own thematic pockets of the story. The tournament invited the main cast and the viewer into the larger paranormal world with just enough teases about what else could be out there, and it feels like Yu Hakusho will never be the same. Then there's the villains. What can I say about Toguro and Sakyo that I haven't said already? If your villain can elicit a feeling from the viewer just by being on screen, you've achieved something incredible. On the flip side, I think the villains were also the victims of some of the weaker story decisions made near the conclusion. It all starts with Kuwabara. The entire thing with Genkai telling Toguro to kill one of Yusuke's friends already rubbed me the wrong way, because it didn't seem to me that she thought he wouldn't do it. Of course, he does pretend to kill Kuwabara, but what would have happened if Kuwabara didn't play along? Aside from that, Toguro had no problem slaughtering innocent bystanders and other competitors throughout the tournament. We're supposed to believe he wouldn't kill Kuwabara? I just don't buy it, and it cheapens his character just like that unseen flashback with Koenma and Genkai's body. It heavily implies he killed Genkai with the expectation she'd be brought back to life. There's a reason that scene was kept from us. It would have completely undercut the dramatic build-up to the final fight. But that's the problem. It feels like a big part of the story was added in after the fact in order to redeem a character that didn't need it. There was enough in Togoro's backstory to make him sympathetic without revealing that even when he was at his most evil in the arc, actually, he was being kinda nice about it. It muddles Togoro's character, and for it to be a last-minute addition, feels a bit too sloppy. Genkai coming back to life really left a bitter taste in my mouth. I came to love her character throughout the saga because of the development she was given. Then, she had the perfect send-off that was meaningful to the arc of the protagonist and his ultimate victory over her rival. There was some beauty in the finality of her death. I think this all could have been solved if Kuwabara really did die. Then, when Team Urameshi wins the tournament, they get a wish from Koenma, but they have to choose who they want to bring back. Between Kuwabara and Genkai, the choice is obvious, but this allows for one final farewell between Yusuke and a content Genkai that would have been one last emotional gut punch. Instead, what we got feels too by the numbers and sterilized, especially from a series that I've come to expect a bit more from. So that's my complicated little rant about the Dark Tournament saga, but don't get me wrong, the highs far outweigh the lows. I loved damn near everything about this storyline, and I cannot wait to see where the hell things go now that the stakes have already been cranked up to an 11. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll shut up.